I don't know if you need to hear this, but all men are nerds. Hi, I'm Andrew Rodriguez, and welcome to Psycho Bible, battling about psychology and theology. And I want to just share something that I tell my clients, in particular my clients who struggle with unwanted same-sex attraction. It's very common for them to see themselves as totally different from other guys, and in particular when it comes to sports. Right now I'm filming this on Super Bowl weekend, and you know, I'm in the greater Philadelphia area and the Eagles are playing, so you would think I would be all pumped and excited, and I really just don't care because I didn't really grow up caring about sports. It's not like I didn't play sports. I played soccer and baseball and or before that t-ball, and I enjoyed it. I loved that. And my dad was involved. He was my t-ball coach and then my soccer coach. And then we did more non-conventional sports like martial arts and paintball and hunting. And so, yeah, I grew up with a lot of like macho things. And my dad's very masculine and very macho, but he really wasn't into watching sports on TV. He might say his favorite team was maybe the Giants because he's from New York City. But if you asked him like who his favorite players were, he couldn't name anyone. And I barely ever saw him ever watch a game. So it just wasn't a thing we grew up with. So I just didn't really develop an affinity for sports. And being a bit of a nonconformist, I really didn't care. But for a lot of my guys, the clients I work with dealing with unwanted same-sex attraction, the sports wound is very deep for them. They get this sense that because they're not either athletic or into sports, because some of them are athletic, but like me, they just didn't really care about sports. But unlike me, they care about that. They care that they're not into sports, and they don't really relate to other guys who are into sports. And so, because they see that your typical straight guy, typical masculine straight guy, is all into sports, they tend to think that they're fundamentally different from those guys. And it's a real area of insecurity or anxiety for them when it comes down to this particular weekend, Super Bowl Sunday, or whenever there's a major game on. And other guys are talking about the sport, they're talking about their favorite players, their favorite team, and they can't relate. They don't know how to connect with them, they don't know how to talk about it, they don't have any interest in it. And maybe they'll go to like the church Super Bowl party, but they'll feel awkward the whole time. They'd rather talk to their wives than sit there and watch the game. They don't know what's going on. And so it just is an area of a lot of insecurity for them. And so this is something that I have been telling my clients lately. All men are nerds. And they'll look at me like, huh? What are you talking about? They always believed that they were nerds, and all the guys in school growing up who are into sports, who are jocks, they're in a different category from them. They're like, we don't have anything in common. They're in a different world. But you have to understand what it really means to be a nerd. A nerd is simply someone who is obsessed with a thing. Maybe not obsessed, but is fascinated by a certain thing. And this is really, to use a generality, obviously there are going to be exceptions to this, but this is really endemic to men. One of the early things I learned from Jordan Peterson was that overwhelmingly the research shows in the sex differences between men and women, men are oriented toward things and women are oriented toward people, toward relationships. Hence why men tend to go into more STEM fields and blue collar type work, things that require working with their hands or thinking of more abstract concepts and figuring out equations or problems, whereas women will tend to go into more people helping fields like teaching or daycare or receptionist work, or things that involve more socializing. Psychology, counseling. I mean, in grad school, I'm in the minority. There's not many other guys in grad school. So this is actually something that is unique to men, that all men, obviously, using a generality here, but men share this in common, that we have a fixation on things.
Now, here's some interesting things, too. The, the occupational preferences between men and women are actually a lot larger than the personality differences. And the occupational differences are large. And like the gender differences in personality, the occupational preference differences increase as you move towards more egalitarian societies. So the big difference between women and men seems to be that women prefer working with people and men prefer working with things. Now, it's an interesting way to look at it, because for a long time, if you're thinking about sexist stereotypes, say up to the 1950s, maybe a little later than that, maybe up to the mid-60s or so, the idea would have been that whatever gender differences there were in occupational skill, in occupational distribution, would have had more to do with skill. That was so that men were more skilled, say, at engineering, and women were less skilled at it. But what seems to be the case is that if you look at the basic predictors of success, like intelligence and conscientiousness, there's virtually no gender differences at all. Now, so what that seems to mean is that the reason that there are occupational differences, at least in egalitarian societies, is because the occupational differences are driven by choice, not by ability. Now, that's something to think about,
One thing recently that really helps highlight this is, what was it, a couple years ago, there's this trend going around on social media, TikTok and Facebook, there's like a challenge to have women ask their boyfriends or their husbands how often they think about the Roman Empire.
Roman Empire?
How often do I think about it?
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess technically like every day.
Do you think about the Roman Empire ever?
Yeah, I guess, sometimes.
How often?
I don't know. Once a week. How do you not think about the Roman Empire? Basically.
How many times, like a week, or just how many times in general, do you think about the Roman Empire?
What about the Roman Empire?
Just anything about it.
Probably not a lot. Why?
Not a lot? When was the last time you thought about it?
Maybe a week or two ago? The Roman Empire was a very big part in history.
So how often do you think about it?
Not a lot.
How often? Once every month?
Maybe 3 or 4 times a month.
You think about the Roman Empire once a week?
It has a lot of big, stories and lessons, within the Roman Empire of what to do and what not to do. So, yeah.
So you think about the Roman Empire once a week?
Sometimes, yeah.
How often do you think about the Roman Empire?
This dance. I don't know, every couple days.
And these women were just flabbergasted. They were shocked when they would ask their husbands or their boyfriends, and they're like, yeah, a lot. And they're like, really? I never think about the Roman Empire. Why are you thinking about the Roman Empire? And once you invite the guy to share about this thing, this topic that he's passionate about, his eyes lit up. I've seen some of these videos where he brings out charts, he brings out notes. Oh, this is something I think about a lot. This emperor and this, they talk about him this way, but I'm not so sure. And they talk about, the centurions and the different sort of formations and armor and battalions and different battles throughout Roman history. And if you're more of a Bible nerd, then you're thinking about the Roman Empire a lot, because the New Testament is written during the Roman Empire. And so you're thinking about, Paul and his travels and being a Roman citizen, and just the different persecution under Rome that the church experienced. So, yeah, Christians in particular, we think about Rome quite a lot. Maybe without necessarily thinking about it, but we are. And women just couldn't relate to this. They're like, really? But that's being a nerd. And so when I explain this to guys, like, yo, every guy is a nerd. You may be into sci-fi, or hello, if you've been watching my channel enough, you know that I'm into comic books. And my favorite is Captain America. And been a fan of him since I was 4 years old, so way before he was ever in the movies. All right, I'm a legit OG Captain America fan. And so you know that about me. Like, yeah, I'm a nerd when it comes to Cap, when it comes to comic books. I got a huge comic book collection, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not scared to admit it because it's what I'm into. And guess what? All the dudes out there who are all into sports, they're just as nerdy. Think about it. The guys who are super into sports, they're into, say, ask a guy right now who's into sports, who's into football, and as the Super Bowl's coming, ask him, who do you think has the best shot? And they'll start giving you the averages, who's got MVP. They'll tell you like the different performances of players and how they've improved over the years. They can give you all these statistics. They can tell you the averages of when teams were winning and losing. They can tell you when each game was. They have all this data about this thing. But we don't think of it as nerdy because this is the one topic that men can be obsessed over that is particularly socially acceptable here in the West, at least in the United States. All right, you need some more evidence? Just think of these parallels. Sci-fi and comic book nerds, they go to events and they cosplay. Sports fans go to games, they cosplay. They got the face paint on, their jersey. When you wear your favorite team's jersey or your favorite player's jersey, that's cosplay. It's a way to participate. Think you're part of the whole experience. Comic nerds and sci-fi nerds and anime nerds, they like to do their rivalries. Who would win a fight? Superman or Goku, or Superman or Captain Marvel or Batman, and Batman with prep time, he could beat anyone. And then you got, well, sports is all about rivalries and big time rivalries. So my old pastor had a real bad. He here pastoring in the Philadelphia area, and he was a Cowboys fan. And I can never remember why he was a Cowboys fan because he grew up in New York City. So but he was always on the outs with the rest of the church. Your typical nerd in school, he usually does pretty good in the spelling bee. Guys at an Eagles game, suddenly they get real fanatical about spelling. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Like, wow, yeah, you can spell. All right. I just got to throw some jabs at my Eagles fans, friends. But, yeah, you see, like, when you really step back and look at it, guys who are into sports are just as much nerds as guys who are into other things. It's just that this is the one thing that's privileged so that it's more socially acceptable. Now, things have shifted a little bit in that also video games are something we expect men to be into. It used to be, back maybe a little bit before my time, in the 80s, that video games were nerd territory. Only geeks and nerds were into video games. But now, video games are so mainstream that you could be a jock, you could be into all sorts of sports and into video games, and it doesn't like minimize or reduce your masculinity, your clout as a dude. So that's gone more mainstream. Heck, comic books used to be super fringe nerd territory. If I talked about knowing certain comic book characters and all this, yeah, I would get weird looks if I did, so I kept it to myself usually. Now guess what? They're making all these movies off these comic book characters that I've been reading about and drawing and everything else. thinking about and collecting for years. So now, who would have thought Captain America would be other people's favorite character? Now I might like, oh, that's stupid. I was all a fan of him way before. No, more people love Cap. Awesome. So I'm just happy about it. And it just shows that it's just a matter of time in some ways, or just something going mainstream enough for people to realize, huh, all men are nerds. So that's something you can take. If one of your areas of insecurity is that you don't have in common with other guys sports, well, just remind yourself, okay, I might not be into sports, but I'm into something else. There's some other thing, whether it's sci-fi or books, politics, superheroes, movies. I'm like that other guy who's into sports, just in a different way. Might not be the same exact topic, but that trait of being passionate about a thing, a subject, I can share that in common with him. It might not be the same exact thing, though. Hey, I didn't find my crowd until college. I grew up in an area that's very blue collar and old fashioned, and if you weren't into any sports, good luck. Go to college, and I found a bunch of film nerds, and I'm into film too. I found my people. And especially I had a couple of my buddies who were into film and superheroes and comic books. And so we could talk about superhero movies. I didn't have that growing up. So sometimes you just gotta seek out your particular niche. But either way, just know that you being into that nerdy thing is just as masculine as the guys who are into football, basketball, baseball. Okay? It's all nerd. So, don't be ashamed that you're not into sports. Don't be ashamed to be a nerd in your own way. So, that said, I like to combine things. I like to jog and bike, so I got a Captain America biking shirt. So, don't be ashamed to just be into whatever you're into. That's how God made you in some ways, and it's perfectly masculine. So, if you're feeling kind of left out this particular Super Bowl season or any other time where people are talking about sports, remember this. All men are nerds. Hope that gave you something to think about. Let me know in the comments what your favorite nerd thing is. And until next time, please know that Jesus loves you freely, fully, faithfully, and fruitfully. Take care.